In 1970, English organ hard rock psych band Quatermass released their singular self-titled album on Harvest, and from it, the track Up on the Ground. And that was Up on the Ground by Quatermass. Okay, and so basically it began with this rising closed cadence, distorted Hammond riff in D minor, which gave way to this flowing run of double notes up the scale. That's a common motif on these Hammond organ rockers around this time, like deep, like that no. I guess it was just kind of once these guys learned that instrument was an easy. It was just kind of like an intuitive way to use it to do those kind of rapid runs. Maybe no, taking like two notes, like maybe like a root note in the fifth or something, then kind of like just moving it up the scale along that. Yeah, like Deep Purple did a number of songs from this period. Um, and this band, of course, has ties to Deep Purple's. More on that later. This is almost like a mirror band to Deep Purple Mark II. Yeah. Okay. And then the main riff returned with kind of a skip hop pattern by Mick Underwood. One of the first links right there via episode 6, and later Whitesnake. High belting vocals over open power chords. Yeah, I'm talking about the verses now from my notes here. Organ power chords, I must stress, because there's no guitar on this. But that Hammond organ serving the function that like a heavy kind of distorted riff guitar would in a more conventional rock lineup. And then a repeat of the movements we were hearing. Then around 3:10, everything subsided for this like jerky bass driven section with some blocky frosty organ fills. Yeah, that organ getting more shrill kind of, and then growing in its volume and its fluidity, and then cutting back again, another dropout with light bass and drums. That was a feature of a lot of these kind of jam-oriented, open-ended compositions, or compositions that would break up into these like open-ended middles, where it would kind of drop out, and you would have a solo, and then just as things were intensifying, it would drop out even further, and almost to emphasize spaciousness and quietness for maybe 30 seconds. And then we heard a very muted return of the original D minor theme. Yeah, and then the flowing run came back on full, that no, and then we had a third verse. And it all ended all of a sudden after the 7-minute mark with this abrupt plunge into the previously unused key of F for this droning organ feedback fade out. And lyrically, let's see, what did the song touch upon? The lyrics aren't printed anywhere, but fortunately they were printed on the original gatefold sleeve. Up on the ground, sleeping in the park on a Tuesday morning, rolling in the dark, waiting for the zookeeper's warning. Up on the ground, where I come alive if you give me 5 more tries, 15 cakes to bake with my Monday. The first few lines, I'm wondering if this is about kind of a hobo sleeping in the park, or a guy who maybe doesn't really have any place to live, but does kind of tries to keep himself semi-occupied around the zoo, maybe voluntarily. 15 cakes to bake with my Monday joint, maybe sort of drug user, squatter kind of. I don't know what to make, but I know just where to point. Up on the ground, or it could be spoken from the point of view of a mole. Yeah, that makes sense. Up on the ground, where I come alive if you give me 5 more tries. Physicians say I'm ill, right into my liver. But I still take my pills. Then I go rolling with her. Now this kind of indicates human point of view. I'm trying to see how these could be metaphors for the mole life. Up on the ground, where I come alive if you give me 5 more. Maybe these are just kind of fragmentary couplets written kind of in a haze or something. Anyway, yeah. This rock trio consists of Mick Underwood, who had been the drummer for a time in episode 6, this light pop band which also included Ian Gillan and Roger Glover. And basically, when they joined Deep Purple Mark II, this band kind of was the other band to form out of the ashes. And it originally included that woman who was in episode 6. It's amazing. Episode 6 were like this light pop band, kind of almost like a UK equivalent to the Association or something. And they end up splintering off into two of the hardest rocking bands of the turn of the 70s. And they all had kind of that mod, that kind of flower mod look to them. It's amazing that they all became hard rockers, all became kind of like proto-hard rockers, yeah. Yeah, like the woman in episode 6, her look would later be revived by the likes of Faye Fife and Pauline Murray of Penetration. Yeah, Faye Fife for the Rosillos. Yeah, pixie hair and all that. Yeah, all the guys, like Roger Glover, when he was in episode 6, had the most like proto kind of like new wave polka dotted look. I've seen him from that period wearing like polka dotted shirts with like mod, like pixie hair and all that. And to think just how far they could have returned to that look back circa 1981 when Altered Images. Yeah, they were completely like episode 6 looked like a prototype for bands like Altered Images like 15 years later. But by the time like the New Romantics came out, none of the guys in Deep Purple wanted to acknowledge that part of their past. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I've seen some interviews of Ian Gillan from the early '80s, where it seems like he was kind of returning to the hippie look for a time and like trying to double down. It was almost his way of saying, "Screw all you new wavers." Anyway, oh yeah, and this band also had Pete Robinson on keyboards, who would play with a bunch of people, Brand X. And Sean Phillips, Mike Rutherford, Steelers Wheel, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Carly Simon, Brian Ferry, Stanley Clark, yeah, and John Gustafson, who was one of many bassists in Roxy Music. And Hard Stuff, yeah, the John Ducan projects of the early 70s, Bullet, had been in the Spencer Davis group at some. Oh, was involved in the Swedish jazz rock band Ablution. That's kind of a surprise for an English guy. Yeah, even involved in the Pirates. I believe the reformed Pirates when they reformed without the late Johnny Kidd as a pub rock band. Yeah, let's hear another song from this Quatermass album, Post-War Saturday Echo.
And every will turn, electric bodies burn. A world that means nothing. On earth that means
Okay, that was post-war Saturday Echo by Quatermass from their 1970 self-titled album, and it began in G minor with this closed cadence two-note organ riff amid this kind of plop plop 1-2 break drumming, dun 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 like that. If you're a drummer, you could probably have a better technical term for that kind of a pattern. Two downbeats on the first two notes, and then pause until the next bar. And then that dun dun and then it all faded by like the 55-second mark, and then we went into this very lengthy section of slow, quiet, minor key passage, kind of like an organ blues with some in G minor, C minor, was the two main chords used, verses with kind of a sorrowful tone, and remote distorted vocals, sounding kind of like at a distance. Another kind of miking technique that was used on some of these hard rock psych records. Like King Crimson kind of used it on 21st Century Schizoid Man. I believe Gracious used it. And then let's see. At around the 4-minute mark, we had this rising volume for the bridge. The quiet verse pattern returned just about 45 seconds later, and this light, loungy piano solo kind of made its way in there for a bit. And then these rising open cadence kind of wall of sound organ keys just rose up at around the 6-minute mark, held for a time amid this wailing, sustained vocals, wordless vocals, and then we had this abrupt break to this fast interplay. Yeah, that was a real exciting shake-up. Yeah, this at around the 6:50 mark, it just suddenly broke up and went into this unexpected territory where we had these like pile driving drum rolls and keyboard notes, rapid runs amid this like really rapid bass line, descending, and then some really heavier, louder descending organ runs. And then ultimately, it once again subdued to those slow verses from earlier. A bit louder this time, until things kind of subdued about a minute out from the closing, for this like final sorrowful verse. I didn't know how difficult that word was to pronounce. And then right in the last few seconds, we had this like rapid fire descent. Yeah. Post-war Saturday Echo, I didn't remember just how kind of long the slow, subdued passages and that was. I guess when I think of that song, I tend to think of the louder, more brisk passages, like the opening organ run and kind of anyway, the city is a raving neon nightmare. Freudian symbol is my soul. Symbols by my soul. A bit of lyrics are kind of scratched out there. And every way I turn, electric hoardings burn, and words that mean nothing are endless rushing, telling me nothing I really want to learn. This sounds kind of like another like apocalyptic scenario, like one of those scenarios that Europeans that Brits and Europeans would be of like the post-war era are more familiar with. growing, even people who weren't in world, like boomers, like these guys who didn't actually serve in the war, were born maybe at the tail end of it, and yet, or well, the drummer Mick Underwood was born in 1940. He's a bit older than most musicians of this ilk, so he might have faint early childhood memories of the end of the war. But the guys of this generation, they grew up amid some of the ruins that were never rebuilt or never hauled away, um, and so they kind of see the after effects of that war more kind of in their own backyard, like ruined buildings, with overgrowth, fenced off with overgrowth, right next to kind of like newer tenements and stuff. Yeah, a million lonely people in a hurry, sharing nothing but a burden of worry. They're going nowhere at all. They're running at a crawl. And of all the faces near to me, only one ever speaks to me, and that's the face of the clock on the wall. Huh. So the only thing to look forward to in kind of these bleak situations is time, is something later on. Yeah, it's the you've got to run so hard just to stay where you are. You've got to work, you've got to earn, you've got to spend. The more you have, the more you want. A spiral without end. It's talking about the futility of existence in kind of a bleak post-war scenario, working class scenario. It's also kind of like indicative of like the where England was kind of heading this is like 1970, just kind of after the swinging London era, and kind of hinting at some of the apocalyptic visions that would come to a fore, particularly in the mid 70s when unemployment was rising, and there was talk that England might be the first industrialized nation to join the third world. Really kind of scary thought, like a nation that had lost its empire and all that. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, a lot that can be speculated from lyrics like these, and it sung with such kind of like a bleakness to them with those vocal effects that could kind of obscure the words somewhat, make them hard to hear. Uh, maybe they didn't want everyone to just be able to hear them so easily. Maybe they wanted you to do a bit of digging and just kind of use the vocals as kind of like a post-psych kind of fractious sound effect in a way. Yeah. But anyway, Quatermass, band that put out arguably one of the greatest albums in 1970 in this hard rock psych vein anyway. There was a lot of competition going on that year, but let's just say they were one of many bands that were very promising, and one can only wonder how great a few more albums may have been had they continued. But anyway, very talented musicians who would keep on showing up over the years, like Mick Underwood, the Unmistakable, would turn up mid-decade in hard rockers' Straps, and then would be in Whitesnake for a time, yeah. And the other guys I told you about in just journeyman musicians, like always on call. Anyway, for more Rubies and Sapphires from the ruby-packed Quatermass album, see the directory of albums by English Q artists, linked in the description below for Red Hot tracks, from this band and the few other English Q bands. I mean, there aren't many, but it's a pretty high, the quality control of that letter seems to be pretty high. I mean, you got Quantum Jump, Quartz, Queen, of course, The Quick, Quiet Sun, Quiet World, the underrated Quiet World album that Steve Hackett and his brother John Hackett were in circa 1970. Yeah, Quincy Chasm, Quintessence, Quiver, the Q-Tips with the young Paul Young, Quando Quango. Yeah, and that about mentions it all. Yeah. Anyway, like and subscribe, follow me on social media, share the video, and leave a comment if there are any observations you have about the two tracks we just heard. The interplay, the intensity, the lyrics, the sound effects, what passage was the most intense of it all. And until next time, this is Zaragon, the world's most ear-traveled Tramax most, signing off.